order. And I just have a question. Have Jake, Maya, and Amy had a chance to see the plan yet?
I believe so.
Yes, Ken, I did go through it a little bit today.
All right.
I was reading through
And they were
it
both
as
there
well.
for a, Dave did a preview for us last week.
All right. So they've seen the plan. So in that case, I won't do the normal piece, which that I would have asked and said, hey, if they wanted to participate in the questions, go ahead. But they've had an opportunity to ask questions, I assume. Am I right, Carol?
Well, yes, but even though this is a special meeting, I think we probably would want their input if possible.
Oh, I understand. I'm just trying to deal with the work session rules.
Yeah, I understand.
And so would anyone in the would any members of the council object to just opening up public comment to the members of the marketing committee?
No objection.
No objection. Then Jake, Maya, Amy, you're free to ask questions as we go through. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dave.
Yeah, I would love to start with just quick introductions, just so, you know, if everybody just go around name and what your role as city council is, and if there's anything more related to tourism in your role, I'd love to hear about it. So maybe we start with you, Ken.
Well, I'm the mayor, and I'm also the advisor to the Business Advisory Board.
Right. Christy?
Hi, I'm Christy Camp. I'm new to the council of a couple of months, and yeah, I'm just thrilled to show ourselves off as the stewardship magnet that I feel like we already are.
Nice. Dan?
Sure, Dan Sullivan. I'm on the council. I guess my experience, I've had marketing and sales under my umbrella in traditional business roles.
Okay, great. And John?
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. John Hagenow on the council as well. A little bit about me for those that don't know, I work in hospitality as my profession. So really excited to see how a destination marketing organization or something like that would help drive Keystone to be a little bit more successful.
Awesome. Thanks. Jake?
Hey guys, my camera is not working right now. Sorry. I'm Jake, the communications manager for Keystone Ski Resort, and I also manage the resort social media.
Jake, thanks for joining us. And Maya?
Yeah, Maya Russer. I've been doing events and marketing in Summit County for almost 26 years, with 16 of them being at Keystone. So doing lots of marketing, driving close to 60,000 people to Keystone during the summer months. I've been doing it here for 16 years. And I'm just fresh off graduation weekend. My daughter graduated from Summit High School on Saturday, so I am not going to turn my camera on. Sorry.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maya. Aaron?
Hi, I'm Aaron Parment. I'm on council, and I'm the advisor to the Open Space and Trails Committee.
Very nice. Thanks, Aaron. And Amy, I know you well, but go ahead.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'll turn my camera on really quickly. Yeah, thanks Dave for being here. Thanks everyone for being here. We're so excited. I am with Kindred Resort right now. I used to be with Keystone Ski Resort and actually worked for the Keystone Neighborhood Company. So my a lot of my, I'd say most of my career I spent in Keystone, in and around Keystone. So just thrilled that we're at this point. So thanks everyone and thank you Dave for all the work you did on this.
Awesome. And Gabby, and then I think you had a few things you wanted to add.
Sure. My name is Gabby Abel. I'm over at Town of Keystone, Deputy Town Clerk. Just a couple housekeeping things. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. Dave has about 90 minutes and he'll be doing his presentation. And then at the end of each section, he will make it available for comments. That way we can move through each thing. Again, 90 minutes total. We just want to respect everybody's evening. Any other questions before we start?
some.
I feel like I should introduce myself. I'm hoping you all know me. I'm Carol Kerr on the council and the liaison to the wonderful marketing committee. Thanks.
Sorry, Carol, we were chatting before we started, and I just feel like anyways, Carol's been very involved throughout the process, and it's been awesome working with you as the liaison. We really appreciate that. And Amy has been, a lead in working with us. John's on vacation, but has also been really important. And Gabby joined us part of the way through the process, but has also been an important part of the core team. So I just want to say, first off, thank you. Thank you for your time this evening. Thank you for this opportunity. This is a project that came about because you all applied to the Colorado Tourism Office for the Blueprint program. We went through a process in the fall, which involved this core team discussing and moving the process forward. We then engaged with the marketing committee to really get some good engagements and understanding of where they stood and the progress that had been made. We then started surveying the residents and the stakeholders to drive, our conversation forward and understand where the residents sit and where the stakeholders sit in terms of their thinking. We then brought that all into a workshop and processed it together and developed our top priorities for the town of Keystone as evolving destination marketing and management organization, DMO, as you'll hear me say. We also brought some data to the table. Colorado Tourism Office has access to a number of data sources, including profiles of your visitors, that kind of creepy software that tracks, the movement of cars and cell phones, so that we can understand who's coming in and when and why, what they're doing, and then also their visitor spending. And then all of that was evolved, and we decided on what was the top priority out of that process, which was this strategic marketing plan that I'm going to present today. So, a little bit about myself.
Can I just clarify one thing real quick here? I'm a little unclear. This was scheduled for an hour. Is this going to be 90 minutes? I need to work on whether or not I can move some things around if this is going to be longer than was scheduled.
Gabby?
I believe that Dave has 90 minutes total, but it would be optimal to do it within an hour. Is that possible for you, Dave? Or do you think 90 minutes would be preferable?
I think we'll get through the bulk, and then if we want to hang around for additional questions, if that works for you, Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, we're already on an extra night, so I just wasn't planning on 90 minutes.
Okay. We'll try and get through everything by 7 in terms of presentation, so everybody has a good understanding, and then we'll reserve some extra time at the end if anybody wants to stick around for questions. Does that sound good? So
yes, if I can break in, we've been joined by Suzanne Reifstahl. She's our latest addition to the council, and she has one council session under her plate, so under her feet. So I'm glad she was able to join us. Thank you, Dave.
All right. Well, welcome. So we're going to dive into the plan. Let me present that now and start going through it. Just while I'm pulling that up, like I said, for those that don't know, I've been here in Colorado for about a dozen years. I've been coming to Keystone for about 35 years. Mission to Market is a Colorado-based destination consultancy. There's 3 of us based here in Denver and 3 up in Boulder. We do nothing but really work with Colorado destinations on their strategies and execution of those strategies. We're currently working with 25 Colorado destinations on various projects across the team. We're a longtime partner of the Colorado Tourism Office. And, for me personally, the way I got here, I started working in major attraction and a major visit organization. And I started this company several years ago to specifically work and focus on strategies for Colorado destinations. So excited to work on yours, excited to present this and to share with you today what we've come up with as a team. to develop this. So as I said, we've got this core team of John, Amy, Carol, and Gabby that helped guide us through this process. But then we worked and built that circle outwards to gather that information with surveying and a workshop and marketing committee engagement to develop this plan for you. And it's all supported by the CTO's destination management plan. So, you're at this amazing pivotal moment, and you kind of probably have been hearing that for years for those involved in founding the town and now, going down this venture. But it's really a cool, to me, unique time to have an established brand and an established destination, form a town and be able to form an organization that brings, the residents' desires and aligns that with tourism. Bringing that all together has all been thought about and brought into this plan. So, one of the key opportunities that you all identified and we brought into this plan is to build that brand beyond the resort. The resort's an incredible partner and has done an incredible job of building the brand of Keystone. And now we've got this opportunity to spread that beyond and have that mutually beneficial relationship of brand development. One of the key goals I really want to emphasize in this plan is that we're looking mostly, not entirely, but mostly at the idea of increasing length of stay. And the reason we're looking at that as one of our primary strategies is because it brings the most economic benefit with the least amount of negative implications. So when we get visitors that are coming in, overturning in destinations, lots of day trippers, it can wear and tear on the residents' attitude towards tourism and the destination itself. And it makes it harder to manage tourism. If we just increase length of stay, and you'll see the numbers at the ROI of just going from 2.2 to 2.4, we see incredible economic benefits. So that's the key benefit. And then the 4 strategies that we developed that go into this plan are to advance off-peak tourism. So we're not just looking at, how do we drive people when they're already coming here, let's just take a winter weekend or MLK. That is not the goal of just driving more people during peak times and causing more stress for the community, but to find those times of year and those times of the week where visitors are really wanted and needed to support the businesses, support the jobs in the community, and see that benefit. And then building that distinct brand.
Dave, real quick,
Yeah.
sorry, I rose
Sure.
my hand, but I'm not sure if it was
Okay.
seen just with
Yeah,
the
I didn't see it.
presentation.
Sure.
But questioning how the 4 strategic positions, specifically that first one of advancing off-peak tourism, align with increasing the length of stay. To me, it would seem like advancing off-peak tourism is a new guest, not a increase in length of stay guest.
Yeah, I think it's both, really, so that you can advance off-peak tourism by getting somebody who comes at an off-peak time to spend additional time to turn that, day trip, that weekend visit into a week-long visit. But off-peak, I think you may be also thinking just seasonally. So off-peak can also be midweek, right? So if we can get that length of stay up in the winter peak months or, maybe summer weekends and turn those from day trips or weekend trips into 3-4 night stays, then that's also considered off-peak. Does that make sense?
Yep,
Okay,
perfect. Thanks.
Yeah.
Sure.
Let me understand the visitor stay metric can you give us an idea of what the average visitor stays in places like Breck, Copper, Vale might be, so I can get a little bit of perspective?
Yes. I've got in here a little bit further down a comparison of like how you stack up against both by season and then by length of stay against some of the other destinations. But when we compared to Breck, Vale, the other, destinations, you all had about a 10% shorter length of stay on average. And so just by increasing by this 10%, we're able to look at that as as a win, right? So it's like repositioning Keystone as this day trip kind of attitude that we see for a lot of your visitors, to saying, no, we should be going there for 3 or 4 days. There's plenty to do. And that's that kind of positioning of those that just have in their mind the attitude of that's just a resort to no, that's a full destination that we want to spend more time. There's certainly destinations like Mountain Village and Telluride that have much longer lengths of stays. They're much more remote. It's a much different destination. But when we look at averages, we're looking at trying to just move the needle on the attitude by that 10% and reaping the rewards of that.
Dave, just to make sure I understand, page 8 is that index C that you're referencing. I don't see where it would talk about length of stay. Does it boil in more than just length of stay into that index ranking?
Sorry, page 8. This one. Okay. This is just seasonality. Yeah.
Okay. Is there
indexing comparison? You know, I may just have that not in this report. That's possible.
Okay.
That I don't have the actual indexing on length of stay in the report, but I could add that. It's a good note.
And do
Yeah,
you
thank
have
you.
that by seasonality? In other words,
Like
winter
length
season
of
versus
stay
summer?
by season.
Yeah,
We have that data, so I can pull that too. Yeah.
all right.
So yeah, I think I'll look to pull additional data on length of stay and seasonality of that in comparison to your partners. But yeah, it is definitely something that stood out as shorter and something that we wanted to focus on. So I think bringing that in here in a more prominent place would be a good move. All right. I'm going to talk about budget more later. I just put it up here as a front load to give you an idea of what we're looking at, but we'll dive into that more a little later in the report. So as let me dive in to the data here, some of the data. We need more data. So as we look at this, this is available through the CTO. They use a platform called Datify. It tracks, the number of visitors coming in, where they're coming from, their length of stay, and then, how it breaks out both in-state and out-of-state. I think the summary here is really that, while out-of-state is the bulk of your visitors, the number one place that people are coming from is that Front Range in Colorado, which is part of the reason, as we know, of really pulling down that length of stay and the attitude of just popping up and popping back down. But you do have, in terms of the number one out-of-state state, it's Texas. And we did see a downward trend in visitor days of 6.6%. Visitor days are the number of visitors times their length of stay. So that trended downward in 25 versus 24. As we look at that length of stay, this is what I was referring to, is that you have a 10% shorter than the comparable destinations. 6 days, 6-day plus stays are 20% lower than the comparative. So that's, are people coming in and spending a full week in your destination? And that's 20% lower than this comparative group. And so it just creates that kind of high value growth opportunity there to go from, the shorter stay and the higher volume to these longer days. Other things of note are the seasonality gap. I'm going to get into that on the next slide. And then the midweek softness. And that is, when I talk about off-peak, like I said, I'm not just talking about day of the week, but I'm talking about, time of the year, but I'm talking about day of the week as well. And your midweek, Tuesday to Thursday visitation is notably slower than other ski destinations. And that's all tied directly together. The other note that I have is that Keystone Resort has done a really good job of positioning for family and definitely built the brand around that. I know I felt it personally with 3 kids coming up there and enjoying the family experience. I will say, though, that in the data, it doesn't create a gap, right? Like other resorts also experience strong family visitation to you. So not necessarily any kind of recommendation on change there, just a note that the family positioning didn't lift Keystone above the other resorts in terms of family visitation, in terms of the data we were looking at. So I'm going to jump into the seasonality and then I'll pause. This is where we see in March and December, you're overperforming versus other destinations, versus in every other month of the year, we're underperforming versus the other destinations. So we have this, opportunity, especially in this summer fall time period, to kind of close these gaps with the other destinations and the positioning there, as well as in January and February. A lot of that probably having to do with that midweek gap and the slower time for visitation due to shorter stays. So I'll pause because I think there's maybe a few more questions.
Yeah, this is Dan, a real quick one. If you took out the Front Range visitors, because we are the kind of closest major resort, would we still have that gap? I mean, relative to other folks?
I think we could eliminate that. I didn't look at that as a data set to try and look at like, all right, so no Front Range people in there, and then are we still behind? And I don't have that data in front of me. So I
think it's the only way to reasonably interpret this data, because as Dan points out, you're not trying to eliminate the consequence of geography. We are the closest. People naturally pop up here for a day. So we want to see how we're performing against the target markets that we're trying to influence.
Yeah, I agree that would be a good way to break this out. I will tell you that something that tells me that we're still going to see a gap is that 6+ day gap, and that we're seeing a 20% shorter, lower performance in the 6+ day. Because I think that that's not generally coming from your Front Range visitor, and coming from your longer range visitor, but it'll be interesting to see where that adjusts that number as well.
Yeah, these numbers don't the March and December numbers don't surprise me because of the Front Range school vacation schedules at the end of March.
Yep.
In December, you have the school vacation schedules around Christmas and the holidays. So I would expect to see those numbers higher, which is why Dan's question, I think, would be really interesting.
It'd be a good way to break it out, and I can flip that to you guys real quick to look at that. I still think you're going to see a great opportunity across these seasons to close those gaps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One, Dave, just more of a comment, I think, on this is a lot of times Keystone has this residents or even visitors have this mindset that we're really busy in the summer due to our festivals. And while I think festivals bring people to town, and it's no question if you've been here on a festival weekend about that, right? But sure. I think what this data is showing is they're either not staying with us or they're not staying up here at all. And I think that's important to note. Or they're staying for the one festival weekend, but that doesn't nearly offset the off-peak times that we've talked about before.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not seeing other experiences other than the festivals. And
I think that's, one of the main points here in this whole effort is to raise their awareness of that, right? Their primary awareness of Keystone comes from the resort. And if the resort isn't operating or isn't marketing at that time, there's a real information gap, an awareness gap of what is happening and what all there is to do. So yes, we're going to see some shifts in the data when we start isolating things. I don't know that it changes the opportunity, right? So. Okay.
I'm not really prepared to speak about it, but the festivals actually do drive quite a bit of overnight visitation for the Keystone community. So
generally, is that weekend focus, I presume, right?
Yeah, Friday, Saturday night, but we've put a concerted effort into getting people to stay. We do see Sunday night as a huge opportunity, which is why we even do festivals on Sunday. So
Totally. Okay.
Yeah, if you guys have
That makes sense that people want a place to land after they've been enjoying, say, the wine at Wine, Jazz, and Art.
Exactly. And if you look, a lot of festivals throughout the state and in general are just like one big Saturday, but we do make an effort. There's an economy of scale in all the setup we do over the 2 days for the festivals. So we decide, we set up all this infrastructure and bring in, a good bit of people. Let's give them an additional day to stay, which is why we even do Sundays, because Sundays are kind of a losing proposition. But we always say it's kind of the icing on the cake. And if we can get people to stay over Sunday night and head down and make Monday their new Sunday, we have seen great success with that over the last probably, I don't know, 8 years or so. We're starting to finally get that Sunday night stay to tick up a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, the strategy events are a huge part of just raising awareness and getting that hook, and the idea is that the town then leans in and leverages those events, especially during need times, to drive people to come. And then that builds on the success for the event, and maybe the event goes from a 1 day to a 2 day that drives even more overnights and more
Absolutely.
vendors that come early and stay late.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
No, it all works together, right?
For sure. And the more we keep them here Sunday night, like, let's get our restaurants to stay open for an additional hour. I mean, you talk about an additional stay or an additional night lodging. I'm looking for an additional, hour of business for the restaurants or for the shops. Instead of closing at 5, like, let's stay open till 7 and because that's when people are looking to shop or grab a bite after they've been at the festival all day. So that's my little 2 cents.
Nice. And I think you'll like when I get to the ROI, it's not about overnights. It's about just adding 2 more meals and what that does to the economy. So
Absolutely.
nice. All right. I'm going to jump into marketing strategies and audiences and keep us moving, but I welcome your questions once I kind of finish this little piece here. So the major marketing strategies that we're looking at are cross-marketing seasons. So we've already got a great audience that's coming in during the winter, and then just making them aware of just how wonderful the summertime is, all the events that are happening, how beautiful it is, all the recreational activities that you've got, because they may not be thinking about you because they've been marketed to by Winter Park or other destinations that are in front of them already. And then extending length of stay. This is the idea of making people aware that this is a great base camp, that they can do so much more. If we're talking about the winter time, that we have itineraries that we get in front of them so that they can see the possibilities for 3-4 days, because they might just be thinking about, we'll get up there for 2 days of skiing and come home, and not think about the other activities that they can participate in on non-ski days. In terms of driving off-peak visitation, this is really a recommendation that one of the ways in which we drive that off-peak visitation is to weight our spend so that we're not just marketing those peak weekends and things like that. We're letting the resort do the majority of the carry during the winter and focusing more of our efforts summer, fall. Not that we're going to ignore winter, but we're shifting and adjusting our budget to try and drive that time of year. One tactic might be for driving off peak is to raise awareness of a basin still being open, later in the season, and that being an opportunity for people to ski. And then also, as you're not creating lodging deals or promotions, but just working to help promote those and drive those so that people are aware, that might be looking for those lodging deals that are driven out by higher demand pricing of the opportunity for lodging packages that are more affordable during the week. And then we start getting into the longer haul and international, where Texas, Florida, and the Midwest are already strong developing markets for you that you're seeing show up. Let's go invest in those markets to raise further awareness where you already have a whole bunch of advocates that have been there, but there's plenty more people that could be convinced after hearing from their friend what great trip they had from Keystone, seeing the advertising, seeing the PR placement that converts them to actually booking the trip. And then we move into the idea of international and how do we go after that. With the budgets you're looking at, we're not looking at trying to go that alone like Denver does, but really partnering with the Colorado Tourism Office and taking advantage of their presence in a lot of different markets. Just to give an example of Mexico, if you've skied at Vail, you know that there's a ton of visitors from Mexico that come there over and over. Let's try something else. Let's experience something else in Colorado as just a part of that and getting that into the media and the travel planners down there. And then they have a travel exchange program where you can work with all your partners there to get listed so that it's easier for your partners to be able to book or for international travelers to be able to book online. And then there's the enhancing the visitor experience. And I'm throwing a lot of strategies at you, and I'll pause here in just a moment. Where we're enhancing the visitor experience, my recommendation is actually not to invest in a visitor center with a physical location, but to invest in training your frontline workforce to be able to answer questions about what should we do, where should we go, all of those things that they would normally get walking into a visitor center. We can actually go ahead and just train your frontline workforce. And then the final is expanding that event attendance like we were just talking about as part of our strategy, whether that's a convention or sporting event or, you know, a recreational public event, cultural event, if you will, getting partnerships to help grow those events, grow attendance, and drive length of stay and visitation. So I think I saw a couple of hands up. Whoever wants to jump in, go ahead.
Christy, do you want to go first?
Thank you. I'd love to, just in case, because I will have to go remote and I'm going to be listening. And I just want to make sure we have an avenue to give you more comments after this presentation, because I feel like I'll have some details to add, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So that's my first question. Okay. So generally what I want to talk about is, I'm wondering first if you've got other states in mind besides the ones that have already shown that they are coming here, such as California, which, you know, has the same pass. So, you know, strategies to attract states that are likely to with a little nudging. So that's one area, as well as countries like France that have a decreasing ability to ski. So I sorry to kind of rapid fire this, but again, I don't want to lose you. So I love what you were saying about the learning lab and how we could utilize that. So I have a lot of ideas that we could also utilize that with some of the programs that we have coming up to engage community as well. So kind of the 2-in-1, which looks like what the Colorado Department of Transportation is trying to do, is to combine that goal of when we're talking about stewardship or recreating outdoor industry, as well as caring for land and water. It kind of does a dual effect when we have, let's say, associate programming with Friends of Dillon Ranger District and Blue River Watershed Group and HC3. They have events and programs that we could easily utilize, and having that on our calendar and promoting that as a 2-in-1 could also be a part of that learning lab. And sorry, I just
let me respond to a couple of things, and you can come back when you find your notes on the other thing. So with these markets, so this strategy is a little bit higher level. It's intended to direct an agency to execute with you. So my recommendation is to start fishing where the fishing's good, you know, in these Texas, Florida, Midwest markets. But they'll do their own evaluation and use data and all that to make sure, that those are the right markets, and then work with you all as, you'll see, we ramp up the budget to be able to fish in additional markets that makes sense. So that's kind of that recommendation. And the same thing goes with international too. I do strongly recommend partnering with the CTO, just because international marketing is extremely difficult and expensive to go your own. But I think advocating for France as an opportunity market, and I think they're always looking to partners to figure out what the right markets are to be in, makes sense. And then the final thought on the learning labs, you're absolutely right. We actually developed these for the Colorado Tourism Office, and we always integrate the stewardship messaging with that, and try and train people on if you have an issue with like people not picking up after their dogs, that becomes a part of the messaging, or if there's more important stewardship messaging that you want to make integrated into that, that's always customized by you all in the destination as a part of this. So
Great. So I just
Yeah.
have two more and then I'll stop. I'm sorry to take over for a second.
Mhm.
So there are ideas that I have about what is within driving distance that has no stay, like certain hot springs that you could not go and stay at, but it's about 20 miles from here, as well as different experiences on horseback. I know we have our own here in town. There's also a couple of no stay cattle drives within driving distance, and a horse center in Silverthorne.
And I'll just comment on that I think you're taking the right approach to think of the region and think of yourself as a base camp.
Mhm.
And that being, the right approach. Like base camp here, it's amazing. You've got all the amenities you need and some major attractions right in your backyard. But to convince them to stay a whole week, we've got to show them the region. So, yeah.
Okay, so again, I'll just email other ideas because it's basically just about the events that we could also highlight for the convention center. So
Okay.
thank you very much
Yep.
for this presentation. I look forward to talking to you by email. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Christy.
Dave, two quick ones for you. So, and you kind of addressed this one, but for the long haul, you had mentioned kind of what I saw is competing with big fish in big ponds. So we have a lot of big players talking about the Mexico and Texas markets that have established marketing down there. How do you think we would be effective with being the new kid on the block almost with marketing in those areas?
Well, the nice thing about those markets is there's a lot of fish. Yes, it's competitive, but you're sitting on the back that Colorado has already established itself as a really strong destination. So you're not just going after like what I would consider a new visitor, but a visitor that maybe has been to Colorado, once or twice before and is looking for additional destinations. It's kind of like when an international visitor comes to the US, they go to New York, LA, Chicago, first visit, and then they look to explore the rest of the country, and Colorado is pretty strong on their radar at that point. So I think trying to develop markets where Colorado is not the trend and it's smaller markets is probably more of an uphill battle than trying to convince a market that already has momentum towards Colorado in general is going to be easier fishing.
So take a little bit of the broader market share versus try to build a new market share.
Yeah, at this point, right?
Okay.
As we look past the 3-year strategy, you might be looking at strategies like that. But I think your best return in the early years is going to be this one. So.
And then with the learning labs, you had talked about our frontline workers. Do you have any examples of other communities where you might work with, like Keystone, the town of Keystone, and the marketing agency would have a very limited staff. It's not like Dillon, who has a very large marina staff, for example. And obviously Vail Resorts is a very large employer in the community, right? So we would, if we were to use number 5 strategy and use those learning labs, we would obviously have to partner with those major employers in town. Do you have any examples of other communities that have done that successfully?
Yeah, for sure. Aspen is a good example. They partnered with, Aspen Skiing Company and trained the workforce there. And the way that it worked was the chamber there put up an incentive for people to take the training, and it really, they had a strong uptake on the training. And the other thing I would recommend, and this may not be a year one type approach, is to combine the online learning with an in-person approach so that you get both types of learners to be, able to participate. So, you say, take this online learning, engage with us, and go through this, and it's like the biggest bang for your buck. And then year two, you might as you get into this and develop the program a little bit more, you might offer an in-person training as well that really elevates those that are like, no, I engage with visitors all the time, and I really want better training or deeper training. Yeah.
Perfect. And so the
Yeah.
Aspen Chamber paid for whatever the incentive was, right?
Yeah, I forget what the incentive was,
Okay.
but they, and you can also work with partners, to potentially provide incentives. We've seen that before, where
Okay.
if there's something highly desired, like Glenwood Springs offered hot springs, visitation, things like that. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Aaron?
Aaron?
Yeah, I was just wanting a little clarification on one of your answers. It sounded like one of your focuses was trying to enter the competitive market environment for markets that are already looking at other Colorado resorts, and then trying to compete in that marketing space. Did I interpret you correctly?
Yes, I think I'd expand that to say the Colorado Tourism Office has the largest budget. They work with about $10 million marketing budget, and they're already opening up those markets and driving interest in Colorado. And therefore competing with people who are already interested in trying to plan their trips versus trying to develop that interest from scratch is a lower barrier. All right.
Thank you.
Cool. So I've got 5 priority audience segments. I'll kind of go through them in this format rather than the one no way you could read. So there's Front Range families. We know this is your top visitation market. And we know they're showing up. We've built out, this is what your agency will use to dive deeper into understanding, exactly what their demographic profile is, what some of their motivators are, their interests, which helps build out, social advertising, how we can reach this group, that this group is primarily, we're looking at a seasonal focus. I think one of the requests was to drive a fall pilot program this year to try and get more visitation in the fall. And that, with the budget we're looking at, would primarily focus on this group and driving them. And then, getting them to look at weekend getaways, 2-3 nights, and getting them up there during that fall season as one of the primary drivers for this group. Now, year round, when we get to that type of approach, looking across more the non-winter season, or as we layer in advertising, looking at trying to extend the midweek stay and getting in front of this audience to say, come spend more nights than just those weekends. But that is difficult for families, right? So it's a little bit of an uphill battle, is to get them to extend their midweek stays. And we might be looking at a secondary audience for that approach. Domestic fly-in market, vacationers. This is, like we talked about, the Texas, Florida that's already showing up, some of the Midwest, and going into these markets with the opportunity of, summer and fall is kind of a lead and driving those. with winter peak and shoulder seasons, trying to get those midweek stays like we talked about that are a little bit more off peak, as well as some extending their stay a little bit outside of just the absolute peak of winter. And then this group is also more likely to stay 4 to 7 nights. As you know, as you've traveled, the farther you travel, the more you spend, the longer you stay. So, looking at that data, Texas, Florida, Midwest are showing up already, and trying to lean into those markets and get more traction and more people coming in from there as a strategy. And then we looked at the event and adventure travelers as an audience that, it's going to be more of a hook. So we're trying to hook these folks with some of the events that you already offer, and getting those in front of them, making them aware. This is, for example, one of my bands I like is playing, or one of my activities has a festival that you're offering, and therefore I'm going to book when I see that festival, as a way of like celebrating that and hooking it to a trip. This is going to be, that 1 to 3 nights because they are tied to the event in general, but it is also a high value because they're flying in and spending more money and making a trip out of it. And then we've got the conference attendees. You already have a group of conference attendees. And one of the ideas is, how do we make them aware of all there is in the market to explore, that by getting them a pre-visitation itinerary, and travel planning information, working with the meeting planner that already puts these kits together for the meeting attendees. And then also a post-conference re-engagement that's like come back and allows them to, understand that there's, they enjoyed while they were there for the conference and they should book a trip back with their family. And by getting those itineraries to the groups in advance, we're looking at the opportunity to give them a chance to invite their family and come because they can see all there is to do. And then finally, the international, again, partnering with the CTO. These folks are staying longer. They're making multiple stops across the US. This is a matter of trying to get on their itinerary and be added as, an amazing place to stop. Not just in Denver, not just stopping in Aspen, but adding you all to their itinerary, visiting the US. So is it Aaron? Oh, no, John. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, thanks for breaking all these down. Question in particular about the event and adventure travelers. When I think about some of the local resort communities, Copper, Vale, Breckenridge, the 3 that come to mind with larger festivals, and then Aspen a little bit farther away, and specifically with music related festivals, right? Copper does their, I believe it's called Union Peak Festival, and a variety of other music series throughout the summer. And then Breckenridge started a on mountain DJ sets. Basically, Vale has John Summit, and then X Games, of course, in Aspen. And then they also have a music festival in Aspen, right? And so those are, for me, large names that some people will travel or fly in for those music performers. And while I think that some people might travel in for our music performers, the percentage is much lower in Keystone. Do you think that it would be, and that was the background, right? But the question really is rooted. Do you think it'd be advantageous or worthwhile for us to look into some sort of music or larger scale sponsorship like those other resorts are doing?
I think I would not take that risk on myself. I would look for a partnership with someone who really knows how to book and take advantage of those larger investments in artists that do draw in major audiences. So that's, do you want to open up the partnership with, an AXS Live Nation type, or to bring in those types of larger artists? But taking the financial risk of putting on a festival with, it's probably going to have to be outdoors. weather risk, the promotion and all of that is not something I would recommend doing by yourself. Opening up the door, if your community is willing and interested in doing that, the conversation with, high-end professional bookers could be a really great way to put on a nice, high-profile music festival.
And that's
You-
probably what you described there. Sorry, Ken, that
Go ahead.
AXS partnership is probably what the other resorts do without holding
I
your feet
think
to the
so.
fire. Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
You know, when you look at Summit County and areas around Keystone, what comes to mind in the event area, aside from River Run, is the Dillon Amphitheater and all of the events that they have throughout the week, and all in the weekends, and they bring in some medium quality talent. I think they'd say it was higher, but medium quality talent. Is there an opportunity, do you think, to potentially partner with them to be a base for a lodging base for people attending their events?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you guys are just, I consider that part of your footprint almost, right? I mean, maybe not the actual town boundaries, but for sure in like that regional approach, and saying package with that. So, yeah.
I mean, I think
It's
there's a
already
point.
happening naturally.
I
The Dillon
think there's a good
Amphitheater
point to-
people stay here.
They do stay here because they want to stay not in, the Best Western.
Right.
And we offer a much better experience. And I do think that there's actually, I would say there's some above medium quality talent that ends up in Dillon Amp. I mean, we've got Lane 8 opening for the season. You've got Bob Dylan playing there. You have a lot of major players who play here, and then they go and play at Red Rocks. And when you talk to them, they go, we actually like Dillon Amp better than Red Rocks. It's a better venue.
Yeah, Dillon
And
Amp is highly rated.
I can think back, there was a time in the past where there were some bigger acts that did end up playing at Keystone, headlining in temporary stages that were set up in, the parking lot that is currently the Kindred Resort. But that was the outdoor space that was converted into an outdoor venue. And there were some fairly well-known national acts that were brought in. And, we have some pretty large state acts that end up at Warren Station, I haven't seen them in a while, but like the Motet used to play there. And I wonder what could be done to bring some of those back.
Nice. I'm going to ask maybe that I get 4 or 5 more minutes to kind of put the rest in front of you, so that anybody who has to bow out at 7 has seen and heard the presentation, and then we'll come back to questions. Does that work for you, Ken?
Yeah, that works for me.
Great. So funding wise, in the first year, tried to stick fairly close to the 100,000 that I understood was allocated towards this effort. We're crossing years. We're not going to get into that exactly, but trying to stay relatively close to that. A lot of the efforts are in this year are in developing the brand, the website, the content, and then all we have is some money for a pilot program. We are going to get things a little bit out of order in the first year from Ideal because we do want to launch a pilot program. I'll go through that process, but all of that's kind of built into that first year. And then as you get past the first year, we've built in these decision gates and off ramps, which allows you to evaluate, did the agency deliver? Did the pilot program happen? Was the website launched? Are we ready to step up to the next level before we unleash additional dollars? So the RFP that I've drafted is for 1 year, and we'll put that in front of you in a future point. But this is all geared around the idea of let's figure out this first year, get the baseline built, and then expand from there. In year 2, we're able to allocate a lot more towards advertising. Agency of record encompasses a lot of services, including getting some photo and videos done, including creating, your social media content and your blogs and your email content. So there's a lot of services expanding your team in that 75,000. And then a big chunk goes to the media buy that is that advertising we're talking about that runs in those markets, reaching those primary audiences that we talked about. By year 3, we're scaling this up and mostly increasing the media buy. We're asking our agency to do a little bit more work. We're making sure that we have the PR work supportive, although that came in year 2 as well. And then I did make a note that, year 4 and beyond, you might even grow this further as you try to compete more directly with Winter Park, with Vail and other resort towns that have the larger budgets. But we're scaling here and investing in the places we need to invest so that when we are ready to make that consideration about these bigger investments, we've tested, we know it works, we've got a good system in place. And then we have the ways in which you could expand your dollars by working with the Colorado Tourism Office. They have up to $69,000 in matching grants for marketing and managing tourism. Plus, I put in here, this is, a relatively just arbitrary amount of co-op partnership. So if you're working with the resorts or with Kindred or those that have their own marketing budgets, can you invest together to grow the pot and reach out to the same people so that you have more or less at this point, after year 3, working your budget up to $500,000. And I don't know if anybody noticed, but there's a link in here that's a little bit of a sources and uses to dive deeper into that. And then there's all of these CTO programs, and I'm sure you have questions about these. We're getting on with the CTO, Amy and Gabby and I tomorrow morning to go over a little bit more of this and how the CTO can continue to support and partner with Keystone. At one point, you all applied and did not get accepted to a grant, and because they wanted you to go through this process and have this plan and establish into more of a DMO, but they are ready to work together and partner. And then this is an analysis that is more of a storytelling analysis that it should be thought of as a study of what is an ROI of this investment. And the idea is if you can extend that stay by just 5 hours or 0.2 days and get 2 more meals out of a visit, that this, if it were true across 1.3 million visitors buying 2 more meals, that's $117 million increased spend annually. And cross-check this back against what your average spend is. And if we just took that and extended it, the numbers kind of cross a line around this idea of by, growing your length of stay by this, you can get this kind of return. Now, this is not expected in year 1 or year 2. Really, by year 3 is where we can start to see the impacts of your work and the return on your investment. And so that return is, huge for the community in this 290 to 1 because the visitor spending goes up by, that times the amount you spent. But the town's tax return is 5 to 1. This is why communities invest in tourism. It helps fill the coffers, it helps drive taxes, and this is the potential side that I just wanted to put in front of you. And so in order to get there, building a sustainable DMO, we're looking at the idea of the marketing committee transitioning to an advisory committee. Volunteers are wonderful, but they have their own jobs and responsibilities, and it's difficult to get the work done. And so that in this plan transitions to the town with that employee or employees in-house responsible for the plan, and the marketing committee is represented by the resorts and outer area businesses and vacation rentals and lodging and different people that have tourism connections to review the plans and give feedback and advisory in a specific sense once council doesn't want to designate all of that time to do that and help drive it forward. And then in order to support this, recommending this year a 50% FTE, which I think John and you all have already moved towards, is
I don't think that's been agreed to yet.
Okay, I apologize. I'll just put it as a recommendation there. Thank you for correcting that. So a recommendation to move to designate that time to be able to implement this, working with all of the recommendations here, amping that up because there is more work and looking at what it really does take, and then eventually getting to a 1.25 or a 1.5 FTE when we layer in things like meetings and sports and events and marketing and supporting all of that. So, and then there's KPIs and a communication plan. So I'm gonna stop there because I know we're running over, and appreciate the extra time, and I can stick around too, and continue the conversation. But
Aaron can leave, but we'll stay in session until your hour and a half's up.
Sounds good.
This is
Aaron, did you have any questions? If I know you're up.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for somebody to arrive. Until they get here, I can stick around. I'm just
All right.
Curious when you're thinking about your recommended spend, did you take a look at our town annual budget?
Yes.
And where do we get the money to do it?
So there's been discussions of additional funding sources that I didn't put into the plan, but I can work into the plan. Of additional taxes that would be leveraged to
yeah, I was going to ask. Conceptually, I like the concept conceptually. The problem I have is the funding ramp up and the staff ramp up, which isn't part of funding, which is again a town function. Of what would happen to your plan if we tried to initiate the DMO early, like a tax initiative in December to get the DMO started in 2027?
I'm sorry, you said it again. I'm not sure I'm following.
We're following. Do you think would there be downsides to try to get the DMO established with the tax initiative in 2026? And as you do the ramp up to give us the funding source for both the activities as well as the staffing to make this type of a plan a reality?
I will say not necessarily, right? You know your community best. If we go for additional funding and asks of our community before we really tell the story and show the success, that can backfire. I've seen that happen, and I'm sure you have that on your radar. So I think part of this is the idea of that we need to champion this and tell this story and test it, and that's why it's in a ramp up phase. If you think you're already at a place where your community is understanding and supportive and you can move that quicker, then by all means move quicker. So does that make sense?
Yeah, my challenge is knowing our budget and our infrastructure needs, and we're going to get a better feel of that when we start looking at our 10-year capital plan, which will be coming in shortly. I don't see $250,000 available next year.
Yeah.
That's my challenge. I really like doing something like this. I just would like to see
the funding,
a viable funding source to go forward and do it. I mean, you're looking at building staff up of when we are a bare bones staff. And we have 6 members of the staff that do the entire functions of the town.
Yeah.
I'm being realistic. I'm just
no. I think it's a great conversation. I'll play the pro advocate. That's my role. Tourism is extremely important to your community. And by investing in something like this, you can grow the coffers. You can grow the revenues. And if we do it intentionally rather than just let the free market approach or, allow others to drive it without the, resident driven approach, I would say, that is the town. It might grow, and go in a positive direction, but it's better when you're at the table steering the ship. And with this being your number one industry. Yeah, no, that's my job.
I just, as a guy who helped put together the big piece of the initial budget, there were a couple of things when you looked at long-term infrastructure requirements of it absolutely, what wasn't funded was the DMO type function in this type of activity, knowing that we would need it eventually, but that would have to be a tax initiative coming in the future, and major work on trails and open space. And those are all high priorities as we're going through it. And that's something we as a council are going to have to wrestle with and decide if over the next couple of months, we could build, based on this marketing plan, enough interest to be able to fund this. And as I looked at some rough numbers, to be able to provide the staff and the dollars you're talking about, particularly in 28, I see three sources. One, you could increase the short-term rental fee by about $275 a unit, which would absolutely alienate a huge piece of our community. We could increase the sales tax by about 0.35%, and that would fund the 28 efforts. And you could increase the lodging tax by about 0.7%. And those numbers would get us started. But the question is, could we build enough interest in the community to make it happen?
I want to let everybody chime in. I'm just going to go back to the plan and why it's built the way it is that year one stays close to your budget so that hopefully you can find the money to, execute, right? And year 2 and 3 ramp up with the idea that some additional approach would be needed to get there. And that by demonstrating the capabilities and efforts and giving yourselves time to sell this idea to the community, that's why it's built that way. So,
all right.
Yeah. I'll call on John.
Yeah. Yeah, John.
Dan has had his Dan. Did you get your question answered?
Well, no, mine was real simple. Is that we have a tactical opportunity, I think, where we've opened 3 new restaurants, and the target market for all these folks and the other restaurants that we have in town would be Summit County, getting people from other places to come here to eat versus our people going other places. And I'm hoping, this would be a very tactical, short-term, simple marketing program, but I just didn't want that not to be on the table somewhere. Right. Pardon the pun.
Table for one, Dan. So this is probably more of a comment than more a question, but I think that Ken's point about the budget is very true and being realistic about that. While I appreciate the optimism in the math in the presentation of 117 million, to be honest, that doesn't feel realistic. And it also doesn't, for me, show when we're making decisions about the town finances, what our potential gain in revenue would be, right? And where I'm getting at with this is I would like to see a system that's self-sufficient, not reliant on increasing fees or taxes. And so when we look at whatever the potential upside is, right, whether it's $1 to $100 million. What does that possibly look like in revenue back to us as a town to then be able to support these initiatives? Because I just don't think it should be at the expense of our guest or STR partners. And as Ken mentioned, I don't think that would really fly with our community either.
Okay, Aaron's got his hand up.
I think I'd echo what John said there. I'm quite skeptical of the returns because I'm certain whatever town you modeled on has a much higher sales tax that is specifically for the town as opposed to our 0. And any increase in sales tax is going to be a tax that the residents are paying as well as our visitors. That's going to be very hard to stomach. And I don't know, maybe you can educate me here. Are there other resort towns that are spending 20 to 25% of their budget and staffing on marketing? Because I would have trouble explaining that to my constituents without some equivalent to back that up.
No, there's not a town that spends 25% on marketing.
But that's kind of what's being proposed.
No, what's proposed is somewhere closer to 5 to 10%, Aaron. When you look at the total
25% of FTE.
Oh, the FTEs, but that's just dollars. FTEs are
well, still 10% of the dollars. Is that what other mountain communities are spending on their marketing?
There's certainly, I don't have that number. I would say that in a community that relies on tourism, a 10% allocation to that industry would not be outside norm, but I'd have to back that up and do that research.
To the industry or to marketing specifically?
To marketing, no. I mean, there's, if you look at Winter Park, has $1 million marketing budget. There's quite a few communities that spend a lot to market and drive visitation because of the return. So, in terms of the 117 million, that is based off of, I'll have to pull the numbers so if you guys want to dive deeper into that, but I utilized your current tax base to get to this place of what your return is, at least, like, to calculate what your investment to return would be. And that does include lodging tax, and an assumption when we increase length of stay, we're not just getting 2 meals, right? We're getting an increase in lodging tax as a part of that. So it's just a piece, but the bulk is in the sales tax. You do get a portion, right, of, and I have to look back because I did this a little while ago, but you do get a portion of the sales tax that's collected in Summit County reallocated.
Yeah, we get 2% sales tax and 2% lodging tax.
Right, that's what it's based on. So,
Dave, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. With the Winter Park figure you put out there, you said $1 million. And so that's the town of Winter Park spending $1 million on their marketing organization. Is that correct?
They have an investment with their, what do you call it?
Resort.
DMO. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so do other players pay into that, or is the DMO budget in its entirety around $1 million?
I hate talking off the top of my head from things
No
like
worries.
that, but yeah, but the way they're set up is not a town, and this is, eventually I would like to see you all where it is an independent nonprofit that is hooked to a self-sustaining fund, but that's not in the year 1 to 2, 3 year proposal. I think this is meant to meet you guys where you're at. And scale with you, as opposed to a more advanced destination in terms of the town and the establishment of all this has an independent nonprofit DMO that's tied and funded through a lodging tax.
And John, if I can weigh in, I know we did a little bit of the competitive analysis in looking at Breckenridge and what they spend in other towns. I know, Dave, to your point, you don't have it right at your fingertips, but I know just from working over in Breckenridge and with the BTO, that's over 5 million is their budget. Granted, their town budget, I think, is like close to 100 million. So that's different scale, but that's still around 5%. So I'd say, that this, to me, that's about the average rate is like 5 to, could be less, a little bit more, depending on the, but we can pull up some of those numbers too. I think that'd be a good comp analysis just to present to council.
I completely agree. A comp
Yeah.
analysis would be good because quick searches on the Winter Park page found their budget is 214 million, and I don't know if I believe that. And so if we're looking at that, that's not close to 10% or 5%, right? So I think that comp analysis you just mentioned would be absolutely amazing for us to understand.
Sure. Yeah, let's pull that together. I mean, why don't you, I can pull together comps. Is there ones that you would like? I mean, we've talked about Winter Park, we've talked about Breck.
Copper Mountain, although that's going to be tough
Yeah.
because that's all the ski code.
I would say similar mountain resort communities, right?
Yeah.
And you obviously you're the professional, you have a better pulse on which communities have marketing organizations like this. Even maybe look at Estes Park, for example. I know that they have a really good marketing organization, and while they're not a ski community, they are a national park community.
Yeah.
So I would just say similar communities would be the guidance I would give.
Yeah, for sure. Estes Park's a great one. They have a really strong DMO there. I believe they have a $5 million budget. So
The other thing that might be interesting too is in looking at how it's funded, because I know that that's something, Dave, that, we had talked about with the marketing committee and definitely hearing that, questions from Ken, Aaron, John, et cetera. They're all asking about, funding sources. So that might be helpful just to do that baseline education, I think, for everyone.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd love to see the proportionality of the inputs there, particularly for towns where it's a relatively small town with one primary resort fueling most of the economic activity, because that's the model that we are.
So Winter Park, Copper. I mean, Copper's not a town, right?
Yeah, and they probably don't have anything external but the resort itself.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to pull it together. These numbers, I think, will honestly pull things upwards. I tried to go more on the conservative side with your entry in here to get you to a place where you're, having an impact and starting to build that awareness and drive to visitation. And so that's what this is built on. When we start pulling in what is Breck working with, what's Winter Park working with, even compared to their overall town budgets, I think it's going to get super nuanced too, because I think one of the concerns is about FTE versus, percentage of staff. When you get to those places, they're outsourcing this through contract to an independent nonprofit that they've designated, either a portion of the lodging tax to or another model, but most of them you do lodging tax. So, that's where it's built from. And I think if you were to go down this path, is 117 million the exact number? No, that's meant to be more of based on, we have industry-wide numbers that show us return on investment of marketing for destinations. It's based on that. It's also based on cross-checking and across, what trip spend is, and if we can increase length of stay, and meeting us at that place, and then looking at your taxes that you currently collect. So I'm happy to provide additional comps. I think that's going to be really good to look at, and we'll get those back to you.
All right. To give you a perspective, I think right now our total retail sales in Keystone is about 160 million. So when you're talking about
$3 million.
Going to 100, adding 119 to it is for what you've proposed in the near term seems high. You're talking about almost 80% increase with 2 nights, or for 2/10 of a night.
Yeah, so your total spend in your community is 300 million?
No, a total spend, I believe, and I don't have here's a better calculator, but I believe, as I remember the numbers, we're about in the range of 160 million of retail sales a year.
And Ken, part of that is because what people visiting Keystone might not realize is crossing the middle of a road or crossing a national forest boundary, right, means you're leaving the town of Keystone. And so
Right.
those revenues don't necessarily funnel to
Don't
us.
funnel to us, because anything anything on the mountain does not come to us.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that may be a number that hasn't been backed out. So that total spending is,
Yeah, to give you an idea, our sales tax based on a 2% sales tax is 3.2 million a year.
okay. So these, I need to adjust these numbers based on your actual take versus the bigger picture. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly going to scale down that 117 million, and I do think though, when you look at these and the investment, it doesn't need to be at that number to pay off, so, but I can get it right sized.
Yeah. I think the break even based on, if you consider both lodging tax and general fund and sales tax, is about 14 million for the dollars you've proposed.
Break even for the town.
For the town, yeah. It's 14. It's not 100. It's 14. So
The break even at the 3-year mark where it's spending.
yeah, the break year at the 3-year mark.
Okay.
Would be about a $14 million increase in retail sales.
Okay. Those are good numbers to work with.
Because that's assuming we're getting additional lodging tax and additional, which supports infrastructure and additional general fund sales tax.
And that probably doesn't include your FTE expenses.
No,
right. Yeah.
Yeah, that would include the FTE. I assumed about $160,000 for
Okay.
FTE.
So you did include that. Okay, that's good to know. Okay, so I'll rerun some of these numbers based on the town's actual take. And then we'll look back at that to see what the ROI more calculates to. I will tell you, these ROI calculations, I mean, they can be challenging, to get just right. There are companies out there that charge, 25 grand just to run that one number for you. So these are more, meant in the storytelling place of, if you can get people to stay a little bit longer, you're going to see the return. So if it doesn't calculate out to, at least the 14 million, that is the town's return. Early years, it is an investment. As you move forward, is where you see the actual return.
Yep. In our
Christy has her
town,
hand up.
Christy.
Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to say, if I could, Keystone using that destination learning lab could include modules on the town's natural history, the organization's driving environmental stewardship, as well as summer and fall programming, responsible recreation, the content that builds civic pride among the locals while simultaneously equipping the frontline workers to sell the destination with more authenticity to visitors. So I really am behind that part of the learning lab. I love that, but we're going to have to get all of it to, to be able to get to where you were discussing we would get to. So that's a community engagement with CTO's funded infrastructure backbone at no cost to the town. So to get to that level, we would need to have, you know, some planning involved with this, and, you know, kind of work together, I guess.
Yep. And just to add to that, that is part of the reason why there's a recommendation of scaling up your staff, because that does take time to work on programs like that. And then you're leveraging these free programs with the staff. So, Dan?
Dave, yeah, if we have some other questions or comments about this, it might small, who should we send it to? You or Carol, or, how do we want to funnel in ideas? Gabby?
I don't know who. I'll ask Carol, Gabby, who should they go to?
Perhaps you should use me as a representative of the council to this operation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think this has been great, Dave. Makes us all think a lot, and we know we need to do something, and this is the great start.
One of my other concerns is in the conference business, and it's a challenge that we have because 2 days in the winter and summer, 2 days a week, virtually all activities in Keystone don't exist because Vail closes the Adventure Center at Lakeside Village, and they close mountain biking, and the chairlift doesn't run. And Shannon's not on right now, I noticed, but one of my concerns is
and mountaintop weddings.
If you bring in mountaintop weddings, but if you bring a guest into a conference center and they are here on Monday and Tuesday, or Tuesday, I think it's Tuesday and Wednesday, everything's closed, are they going to come back? Because they don't see the experience.
So and Ken, I think that's the off-peak period that Dave was mentioning, and that's a concern for me as well.
That's one. Yeah, it's an off-peak. It's a tremendous opportunity, and I think we're going to have to work with Vail Resorts in the next year potentially as they go through their budget cycle to, if we want to go forward with this, to encourage them to take a stab with us as we put money into marketing to keep those operations open in the summer so you have the guest experience if they want to come back and bring their families to.
And I would also add the duration of the summer season, like Winter Park opened this last weekend and Keystone won't open until the 27th.
Right.
Being the last of the mountain resorts to open for the summer.
Yep. And of course, the golf courses are open, so. There's a lot to market here, a lot of potential.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys.
I
appreciate you guys saying that right now. I certainly can't speak to on this call the feasibility of changing the dates of the resort seasons, like with any kind of certainty. I think, as everyone understands here, there's a lot of things that go into that beyond just the resort of Keystone itself for Vail Resorts. But we can revisit those conversations later on, certainly. Dave, I do you mind me asking, and I know you brought it up right at the beginning when you got some questions about data, but like with like the number like 1.3 million annual visitors, or where we're deriving some of these statistics based off who is visiting in their profiles, can you reshare where that is being sourced from, those insights?
Sure. It's a company called Datify. This is what they do. They track cell phone movement, vehicle movement, and then provide estimations. I think the way I utilize numbers like the 1.3 million is more directional. So when we see a decrease in visitation in 25 versus 24, That's more the value I see in it than the exact number of visitors. So,
It's interesting because when you look at revenue numbers 24 to 25, they increased.
yeah. Yeah, Carol shared that. I mean, both can be true, visitors coming. We have less visitors that are spending more per visit, which is kind of what we want in a way. It's a higher return for us and we want to move in that direction. Maybe not necessarily a negative direction of visitation, but we want to try to leverage higher spending visitors that have less impact than just trying to drive volume. So,
yeah, and this year we are really entering a new market that we were in 20 years ago, but kind of lost with Kindred, because Kindred's really that luxury market, which you're talking about for international travelers, that we really haven't had in a number of years, other than Mexico. We've had a large, at the end of the ski season, when you walk through River Run, the number of visitors who were speaking Spanish was amazing.
Yeah. No, it is pretty cool, to see that. Yeah, I mean, just having spent so much time up there, I'll just kind of say, that there's so much opportunity, and yes, there's a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing, but if the town makes an investment, the businesses could follow, and open more and be there. So it is that, they need your leadership and investment, in order to take that risk themselves. So I agree that conversation with them, if we take this risk and we're seeing some success, are you with us in trying to enhance that visitor experiences? You don't control them, but you can bring attention to the efforts that you have, the plan you have, and then the investments on the private side come along with that. I appreciate the hard questions and the challenges. I'm used to it, but you guys have really good ones that I'm going to go back and research and come back to you with some comparative analysis, some adjustments to the ROI investment. I will tell you, I kind of regret putting an ROI number in. It's ultimately, at the end of the day, these investments do pay off for communities. That's why they're made. The exact ROI is really hard to calculate. And it's more meant to inspire that these investments do return. And, when executed with a good strategy and good partnerships and, a longer term plan, and then selling it to the community to make sure that you have that self-funded opportunity, that's where all of it adds up and pays off in the end. And that's why you've seen it in so many other places. And with being an independent new town, you have this opportunity. And I think, this is asking, I'm not particularly asking, but the plan and the recommendation is to take that first year leap at the lower risk level, see how it goes, see if the community is buying in, see if you're seeing that momentum, and then scaling from there. So that's my summary, and I really appreciate the great questions, and I will follow up. But Ken, or Carol, or anybody
Thank
else?
you, Dan. Dave, you've covered so much territory and given us a lot of food for thought. The comms will be interesting, but I don't think we'll change the trajectory of what we're looking at.
Okay.
Yeah, this was a tremendous presentation. I'm not sure I understand how you make the magic happen, but I understand. But I like the program. It's just a matter of how do we get there as we're going forward, because once we take that step, we're really committing not just near term, we're starting to commit long term, and then you start looking at other impacts on infrastructure and other things. If it doesn't work, and that's the challenge. it's a chicken and the egg and how much risk.
It is indeed, but I do want, you might not have picked up when Dave was talking, he's built in this opportunities and these decision points where we
Yeah.
can check where we are and whether it's all syncing the way you're talking about, so.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, the
Okay,
big question
we're
is
way
really,
beyond your time that you've committed to us, Dave. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate all your time this evening, and we'll be in touch soon. Yeah. Did we decide, Carol, you're getting the feedback?
yeah, Carol
Yeah.
gets the
Okay. Thank you for that. All right.
Good.
Ken, do you need to do something official?
No, yeah. I'll, Gabby,
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
yeah, I think we're done, so I'll adjourn the work session.
Wonderful. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you, everyone.
All right, hey, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Good night,